What's up, guys? Welcome back to another podcast. It's been a month since my last podcast, and I apologize about that. I've just been very busy with the studio. It is being renovated, as I mentioned a couple times on here. And right now, I'm actually doing the work, not contracting. Well, I am contracting, but I'm also doing work itself. I'm hanging insulation right now, and Mike and I are working on that. There's 100 things to do: cutting it, sizing it, cutting around the holes, fitting it. Yeah, stapling it, hammering in some nails that are stuck out too much. I mean, you name it. There's a couple things to do, but we get it done. We get it done. So today, guys, I want to jump right into the podcast. Today, I had a very interesting idea. I've actually tried this before on a previous podcast, but I ended up not airing it. It's going to be conversating with ChatGPT. We're going to give it a prompt, basically, to conversate with us. And we're going to let it know that we're doing a podcast live and that everything that I say back to it has been spoken live, like to you guys. And so I think that'll be pretty interesting. We're going to give it a shot. And also, if you can't tell, I'm a bit sick. I might be a little bit nasally. I am sick. Catching a cold now, unfortunately. All right, before we jump in, I'm just going to describe what we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you guys the ChatGPT window, and here's myself. Hello. And we're going to write this prompt. I already wrote it because it turns out I recorded a whole bunch of questions that came my way, and my recording was paused. So we're just going to have to redo it. It might go in a whole different path now. So we're just going to see what happens. And let's get started.
Absolutely. I understand the task and am ready for the challenge. Let's dive in. So, to start off, can you tell me what inspired you to start this podcast and what the main focus or theme of your show is?
What inspired me to do this podcast was my own journey. And that sounds very, you know, self centered or egotistical, but I don't mean it in that way at all. What I really mean is, I really came from a very difficult kind of, not even maybe that difficult in perspective, but a very different life. And I really wanted something more and better. And I made active changes within myself, and I saw the changes I wanted to see. And when I get on the podcast, and I actually have talked about it in my first episode, which was introspection, I really mean it when I say, when you look deep within yourself and you ask yourself those tough, tough questions, like, why did this happen? Why? Why and why and why? And you really get to the answer, you start to learn things about yourself that are unflattering. I've certainly just had this experience recently. And you want to just be better. You want to make sure something like that never happens again. You want to make sure that you're on the better path. You want better guidance. You want to really be in a better place. And the way you do that is by going in with this process. And so, really, what inspired me to do this podcast was to share that with everyone, because I think it's so simple, right? It's such a simple thing to keep in mind, but I don't think a lot of us practice it. And it's not to flag on anyone. I certainly have not practiced it for most of my life. And so, seeing how powerful it is, I feel like it's necessary to share that. And I've done YouTube for over a decade, a lot of gaming videos, a lot of commentary. And so this was pretty natural to just speak. However, I wasn't always, I don't know, I feel like I'm somewhat awkward now, but I used to be a lot worse. So I'll take how I am now. Maybe if it sounds confident or whatever. There's always that underlying doubt that you might have with yourself. I've always tried to work on that, but I think now I'm more comfortable with who I am, and I'm trying to get better, right? Trying to get better.
That's a powerful and heartfelt reason to start a podcast, and it definitely resonates with a lot of people. You mentioned introspection as a key theme, which is fascinating. Can you share a specific moment or realization during your introspection that had a significant impact on you? and how it changed your approach to life or your podcast.
So one specific moment I've shared, I've talked about this before, but just for this conversation, I've had a death in my family. My father has passed away a bit over a decade ago now. And that moment, I wasn't doing the best in life. I was aiming down. I say that a lot. But what I mean by that is I was doing poorly in school. I was gaining weight. I was not having as much friends. I was doing bad things with friends, let's say. Um, I mean, you name it, right? Just aiming down, bad kid, not being a great kid to my parents, not learning, not growing. And so when that traumatic experience happened, I had something in me was screaming, and it was saying, life doesn't have to be this way. I didn't know what to do about it at the time, like right as soon as it happened, but I contemplated on it for months and months and months, years, and thinking, how do I get out of the current situation I'm in of aiming down? And how do I make the necessary changes in my life to grow, to be better, to actually do the things that I want to do, to not just say the things that I'm doing, but to actually do them, to be honorable, to be a man of my word. All these things have been a challenge for me in the past, and I've only tried to grow from that. And I think I've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. And so that particular event inspired me, I guess, to be better. And you might think, like, how do you get inspired by such a traumatic experience? I wasn't inspired by the traumatic experience, but I thought to myself, what would be the best thing I could do in a scenario like this? And it's certainly not to stay where I'm at, because that's not having a good impact on anyone else around me and not myself. And so if you take the ego out for a second and you look deep within yourself using the introspection that I talked about before, basically you can come out much more ahead and make active changes in your life that actually sustain growth.
That's a deeply moving and transformative experience. It's incredible how you turned such a challenging moment into a catalyst for positive change in your life. Reflecting on your journey, what are some specific strategies or practices you've implemented that have helped you sustain this growth and stay on the path you've chosen?
Plenty of opportunities to leave the path, I'll tell you that. Um, I've made some, over the years, made some mistakes still. I've made a recent mistake as well. Plenty of mistakes along the path. It's like you want to get off the highway, basically. And you get off the highway for a little bit, but you have to come back. You got to merge back on into the highway. The goal is to stay on the highway, keep moving forward. You don't want to get off. And certainly there have been experiences that I've had where I've gotten off the highway. But one thing that I really look to, I actually implement, was a topic I brought up in my first episode, which was introspection and how to level up using the tool of introspection to level up in your life. It's ROEAR method, which is reflect, optimize, execute, analyze, and reward. Reflect is to find the problem that you're having in your life. What's causing you to feel a certain type of way about anything? O is optimize, and it's to identify a minimum step that you'll take to solve the problem. Minimum, meaning break it down until you actually will do it. If you don't take any action, that is not a minimum step. Execute, actually take that minimum step. Analyze, when you have taken that minimum step, you want to think about what you just achieved. It's good to reflect on that. It's basically another part of reflection, but analyzing how you're doing. And the last part is reward. You're trying to solve a problem with yourself. Don't be a tyrant to yourself. Give yourself some grace. Show some ability for taking care of yourself like you're worth taking care of someone you love, basically.
That ROEAR method sounds like a very structured and effective approach to personal growth. It's impressive how you've turned your experiences and introspection into a practical framework. How have you found this method impacting your day-to-day life? And can you share an example of a problem you've solved using ROEAR?
So it wasn't always like that. It was a process that I've kind of fine tuned over the years. And recently I put an acronym to it so I can make the podcast about it. But this framework kind of helped guide my growth. And boy, did it need guiding. Only people that know me will know how much change I've went through just over the last couple years. And if you take it further back, I mean, there's probably more stories. And when I have guests on the podcast, I think we'll explore more about that, especially guests that know me pretty well. Anyways, an example of the ROAR method, I'll give you a different one because on the first podcast, I talked about using the cleaning my room as an example and how that spirals so much changes. But one was identifying a problem that I had with my own brother, which was basically we're having a lot of fights. Why are we having a lot of fights? It always seems like we're having the same type of fights. Why does this keep happening? Reflect, 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 right? Look within myself. I cannot change him. I could change how I approach the situation, or I could change how I address my brother. And so that part came a long way. Part of me was doubting myself. Oh, I shouldn't be prone to change. I think I'm right. But that's the arrogance. The only thing we could control is ourselves. Can't control other people. You could try to, but you're not going to get anywhere with that. The best thing to do is control yourself. And so I changed my approach. And to give you a concrete example, we used to fight a lot about, bringing up things in the past. And this is something I hated doing myself, but you would use it as like a way to win the argument. Goal was to not bring up the past. You have to just stay in the present. And that way you can deal with the situation and actually go and fix something. Basically, it's not ideal to be in that cycle, and we needed to come up with a better way. And me changing my way certainly helped my brother change his ways to some extent. And, we're literally have a better relationship because of it. Like, you talk about some of the most important things, and it's your relationship with your siblings, if you have any, or your parents. Most important thing. Seriously, it's the most important thing to have a good relationship with your family. I can't stress that enough. I mean, I wouldn't be anywhere where I'm at today if it wasn't for my family. My mom, my brother truly have helped me get through the biggest difficulties in my life, and that's to say the least.
That's a profound example of how applying the ROEAR method can significantly improve personal relationships. It's inspiring to see how introspection and a willingness to change can lead to such positive outcomes. Given how important family is to you and how much they've helped you, how do you incorporate your experiences and the lessons you've learned from your family into your podcast content?
One really good thing about my mom is she'll tell me when I'm wrong. And she will have no problem doing it. Even recently, like, moms do try to defend their sons, and for whatever reason, she will do that. But at the end of the day, if you ask her, you know, how did I screw up? She will tell you exactly how you screwed up. And, she hasn't steered me wrong in the way that when she knows something and she sees something, understanding her perspective and where it comes from is more important than to logically assess a situation, because sometimes you try to rationalize things that are totally in a different direction than you presuppose. Like you try to justify a purchase that's very bad. You have no business buying it, let's say. Or you try to justify your way of living, or you try to justify so many things that pull you back, actually. But mom's very honest. And my brother also very supportive, very supportive. And having that supportive structure is actually something I rely on. Um, it's very, it helps me keep me level set in times where I might not be, especially, I mean, more now than ever. And so I look to my family more than ever, and bringing them into the podcast. I mean, my brother's definitely going to be on the podcast, one of the very first guest episodes for sure. If I can make it work with his time. And man, one day, but the goal is to have mom on the pod. That's the ultimate episode.
It sounds like your family has been a tremendous source of honesty, support, and guidance, which is invaluable. Having them on your podcast would definitely add a rich layer of authenticity and depth. How do you plan to structure those episodes with your brother and potentially your mom to make them engaging and insightful for your listeners? Any specific topics or stories you're particularly excited to delve into?
My mom's had a very difficult life. I talk about me having a difficult life. Like, no. Compared to my mom, I'm a piece of sand in the beach. So I would love to bring that level to the listeners to see, how moms can be, what you can aim for if you're being a mom. I mean, I don't say this like lightly, but all of the struggle my mom went through specifically, and to still try to be affectionate, be all of the boxes that you try to tick. You might not tick the financial boxes, you might not tick the being available all the time because you're working boxes, but when she is available, she's very available, and she's just trying to be the best mom she can. And so, to show you why I want to return as much as I can back to her, to show you what it's all about, right? What it's all about. Like, I think an important part of our culture, specifically Palestinian culture, is we're very family oriented. And I mean a very deep, deep family orientation. And I'm not saying anything bad about other cultures here, but we will even take care of our parents, you know, till their very last day. This is our type of culture. And there's something about that that's beautiful, because it shows a level of gratefulness that and sacrifice that is so deep that doing it is the adventure of your life.
That sounds like it would be an incredibly powerful and moving episode, offering a lot of insight and inspiration to your listeners. Your focus on deep family values and cultural appreciation can resonate with many people. Uh, how do you balance sharing these deeply personal stories with maintaining privacy for your family members? Are there specific boundaries you've set for your podcast to ensure everyone's comfort and respect?
Well, yeah, it would have to be something that we both agree on and to share, but it would be something that I would love to talk about. But it would have to obviously be up to her. I mean, I don't see it happening just because I've asked her, but maybe in the future, if it gets more successful and there's more drive to have her on, But it's just like kind of a fantasy, I guess, having the mom on the pod, the final boss, basically. But yeah. It said final balls. Yeah. Shit. Oh god.
Um, that makes a lot of sense, and it's important to respect those boundaries. Even just the idea of it and the way you speak about your mom can have a big impact on your listeners. Shifting gears a bit, you mentioned that you've been doing YouTube for over a decade with a focus on gaming commentary. How has that experience influenced the way you approach your podcast? And what lessons from YouTube have you applied to this new medium?
Wow, that's a good one. So that experience has helped me with the podcast because I know how to use the equipment and all of that. And I know at least now what's at least more engaging than what I used to do. I knew what used to work and what didn't, at least for the gaming. But it was about consistency and I wasn't really consistent. And building an audience, you need to be consistent. People need to come back and watch you a couple times over. And just as an aside, all the support I've gotten on the first two episodes and people talking to me in person and saying, yo, come on, it's been a month. It's been a while since your last podcast. Where's it at? Man, it goes without saying, but man, that right there is everything to me. That means so much because I really want to just speak about my experience and bringing valuable experience and perspective to people's lives. And just in a moment of my life where that has been the most positive thing for me, I just want to do that for others. But the podcasting format just keeps it focused on talking, which is something, I wasn't the best speaker back in the day, right? I used to fumble over my words a couple of times, but me speaking was always better than the gameplay. My commentary was more interesting than the gameplay. And looking through comments on popular videos of mine in the past, people always like laughed at specific moments or timestamp specific moments, which means that people are listening to what I was saying, even if the gameplay was pretty bad. And so that part was like, oh, maybe I should just talk more. Maybe I should just get out of my shell and just kind of give it a run.
It's great to hear how your experience on YouTube has helped shape your approach to podcasting. Consistency and engaging content are definitely key, and it's clear that your audience values your perspective and insights. Given your focus on bringing valuable experiences and perspectives to your listeners, what are some future topics or themes you're excited to explore in your podcast?
Guys, so many topics. I want to talk about even deeper topics. Like, I've had ideas with talking about gambling addiction, talking about health, talking about specific conditions in health. It really depends because when we talk about me doing solo podcasts or guests, I think in the future when I have the studio, I want to do much more guest episodes. And the guest episodes really have a very specific format. And it's usually the guest and I will conjure up an idea, a perspective that they want to share with the world, and I help bring that out. I will use my normal, um, curious mind to help drive that conversation forward and to bring out, you know, really useful values from what they're saying and to kind of help drive that. I want to be an active listener. And I talked about this as my inaugural episode statement. But man, there's a lot of the theme is personal development for sure. That's just the number one theme. The topics are endless. Literally, I'm not opposed to talking about really anything. We have to be careful yes, but as long as there's purpose and meaning and scope to what we're saying, we don't want to go off the rails, but we want to kind of go off the rails a little bit. We don't want, we just want deep, real conversations at the end of the day, real talk. That's what it's all about.
It sounds like you have a lot of exciting and meaningful topics lined up, and your approach to guest episodes will definitely bring out the best in those conversations. Your focus on personal development and real talk is something that can resonate with many people. With such a broad range of topics, how do you prepare for each episode to ensure you're providing valuable and insightful content for your listeners?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk with, I'm going to talk with guests behind the scenes. We're going to conjure up some ideas, and we're going to kind of go back and forth and figure out what's the best, conversation. I've already done this with a couple of individuals, and it's been pretty successful so far. We kind of know what we want to talk about. We're just waiting on my studio to be done so we can make it happen.
That sounds like a solid plan. Having those pre-conversations to outline the best topics ensures that the episodes will be engaging and insightful. Speaking of your studio, what are some features or setups you're excited about incorporating into your new space to enhance your podcast production?
Oh man, so let's just talk about that for a bit because I really didn't have a chance to talk about that. By the way, probably not your most exciting episode if we're talking about the studio and all of that, but hopefully the past conversations and questions were at least somewhat good. But I put a lot of power into the podcast room, a lot of outlets. I have dedicated Ethernet, a lot of good stuff. What that's going to enable us to do is have really good connection down there. We also have heating and cooling down there. We'll have a very nice ventilated, insulated space. It's going to feel like upstairs. And I have a lot of flexibility. There's going to be a cool backdrop, which is also storage for us in the house. So really cool ideas. I mean, we have these cabinets that we're going to use for decoration for the podcast studio, but they also house like so many things from our pantry upstairs, and it's going to free up a lot of space. So a lot of cool things coming with this podcast. But the biggest thing is having the flexibility, all these outlets for power really means, I'm not limited at all. Like before, we had these giant extension cords running from upstairs all the way to the basement to run the Puka Circle podcast. Don't even need to think about it going forward, right? There's plenty of outlets, plenty of power for what I need, and more than what I need. So flexibility is always there.
It sounds like you're creating an incredibly functional and versatile space that will not only serve your podcasting needs, but also improve your overall home setup. The dedicated Ethernet and ample power outlets will definitely make production smoother and more reliable. How do you think this new environment will impact the quality of your podcasts and your creative process?
Oh my God. So right now I'm recording in my bedroom, right? I sleep right there. Hold on, let's see. Right there, right? It's not a great feeling to have work in the same room that you sleep in. Going forward, my workspace will also be in my podcast studio. So I will have a dedicated place to work, and my bedroom is for sleeping and decompressing. I will not see a computer in my room. I will not be distracted by technology. It is going to be a huge improvement in life. And I think I really need that more than anything. So that's kind of why I've been putting everything into renovating the studio, because once that's done, so much other things come out of it, guys, like this, that are just going to be monumental. I've always asked people, like, working from home, how do you improve it? First question I always get, is your work in your bedroom? Yeah. Oh, fix that. Change your environment. That's the number one thing. So I'm going to be able to do that soon. Cannot wait.
That sounds like a game changer. Separating your workspace from your personal space can significantly improve both productivity and relaxation. It's exciting to see how this dedicated studio will enhance your podcasting and overall well being. As you prepare to transition into this new space, what are some of your immediate goals for the podcast once the studio is up and running? Any particular milestones or types of content you're eager to produce first?
So this is going to be the last question I do. And the immediate goals I have is to get everything all set up and to start getting the guest episodes lined up. So literally a week or two before the studio is about done renovating, I'm going to have those guest episodes lined up. We're going to install everything. We're going to decorate it nice. And it's time to get into production, man. That is what I'm most excited for. And also having a dedicated place to work for my day job and being out of the room, again, a huge game changer. So I've talked a lot about on this podcast about the studio every episode, but that is a game changer. And we're a couple episodes away from it, I'm sure, depending on how much of a hiatus I keep taking from these episodes. But I just got to think of another idea for a solo episode because I'm not going to lie, talking to yourself isn't really fun. I want to talk to other people. I think I can bring the same level of conversation that I have on my solo podcast to guests, but I think it'll just be enhanced because you have live perspective about someone listening, and at least you get some feedback, and you could take it a little further. Talking to ChatGPT is nice, but I don't think it would be as interesting as talking to a live guest, especially people that I know that actually want to be on the podcast and people that have a lot to say other than myself. Look, guys, if you enjoyed the episode, let me know. And hopefully there's some good clips out of this podcast. But that will be for me to decide later. If you guys enjoyed, let me know in the comments. Share this video with anybody you would like. Or just engage with it anyway. That shows your support for me. And I most definitely appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. And I salute you to a peace out now. Whatever that means.